Okay, so this is a tutorial for Claire. Claire had requested, she wanted to know how to make this skull with an American flag. And the steps are fairly similar to another video I posted, but I'll do this one too. I chose a different flag this time because I was kind of getting tired of the other one. And this is, I did not know this was called a Punisher skull. So if you Google Punisher skull, this is what will come up. So you can see if I click on this and then look down here, that tells me that that's an image. And then same with the flag. If I look down here, that tells me that's an image. So you know that that's an image. It's not, it hasn't been traced into paths yet. So that's the first thing we need to do. So we're going to trace the flag first. We're going to go to path with it selected. We'll go to path. Trace bitmap. Okay, for the flag we're going to use colors. We're going to use 3 scans because there's only 2 colors. There's blue and red. And I'm going to tell it to smooth, remove the background, and I'm going to unclick stack scans. And then I'm going to tell it to smooth corners. Okay, so update. That's what it's going to look like. So I say OK. Oh, it didn't get rid of the background. Let's try again. I must have... Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Alright, so there's the flag. And similar to the other flag I did, you can see that it did a good job on the stripes. They're nice and smooth, but the stars are really blobby. So we're going to trace it again, but we're going to change the settings to get those stars looking nice and crisp. So to do that, we're going to go back to mode. We're going to uncheck smooth, and then we're going to go to options and uncheck smooth corners. And then we'll tell it to trace again. And you can see here in this flag, the stars look a lot better. So I'm going to close the trace bitmap. And this is our original. You can see it says image. If I double click on it, I don't get any nodes. If I double click on these guys, I get nodes. Okay, so this one we can just delete just so we don't get confused and try to do something with that one. So now we're going to take these 2 flags apart and put the parts we want together. We want the stripes from this one and the stars from this one. So if I click on this one and say Control-Shift-G, which is ungroup, now I can see these stripes are jagged. So I can just take those stripes and delete them. Same thing for this one, Control-Shift-G to ungroup, and we don't want the stars, so we'll click on those and press delete. Alright, now we can put the flag back together, and I am going to select it all and press the number 3 to zoom in, and then I'm going to click on the stripes and use the arrow keys. Well, they were already lined up, but that's how you do it. Okay, so there's our flag. Let's select all of those guys and move them over here. And now let's trace our skull. Okay, so path, trace bitmap. And this time we're going to use brightness cutoff because this is a simple black and white image. Threshold of 0.45 is going to be just fine. Update to see a preview, and that looks great. So I say OK. Alright, so there's our trace. You can see that's selected, and down here it says it's a path with 504 nodes. If I click on this one, it says it's an image, so we don't need the image. Click on it and press delete. Alright, I'm going to close the trace bitmap now. If I press 4, that gives me a view of all of the things on my canvas. So then I'm going to press the minus key to back off a little. Alright, so this is basically the same thing we did with the other one. We need to make a we're going to use path intersection to get the flag inside the skull, but we need to make a negative of this first. So I'm going to duplicate it once and then pull one off to the side for later. And now I'm going to press Control D to duplicate again. Now when you press Control D to make a duplicate, it puts the duplicate exactly on top of the other one. And this can help you when you're trying to line things up, which is what we're going to do. If I press Control Z, it'll pop that back where it was, but I still have 2 copies. If I click off and click back on, I've selected the one that's on top. Alright, so the one that's on top, we're going to break it apart by pressing Control-Shift-K. which is the same as path break apart. All right. I'm going to do it again because I lost what I was doing. Control Shift K. All right, now we're going to do path union. Path union. That puts all that, makes that into one solid thing. So I'm going to put that back on top. I'm going to change it to red. And now I'm going to send it to the back. I can say object lower to bottom. All right, so now my outline is on top and my solid is on the bottom. And I'm going to select both of those by clicking and dragging across. So you can see down here it tells me I have two objects selected. All right, then I'm going to go to path difference, and that makes a knockout basically of what I had previously. So now we can use this to do path intersect on this flag here. Okay, I am going to change it to black, and I'm going to press the home key, which is the same as object raised to top. All right, now I'm going to turn the flag. I'm going to make the flag a little bit bigger. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on both parts because they're separated, and I want to leave them separated. I don't want to group them because I can't do the intersection with group. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and click and drag. All right, so that's got my flag a little bit bigger, and I'm going to line my skull up. And I think I'm actually going to take, again, hold down the Shift key and click both of those, and then click again to get my rotation handles. And I'm actually going to rotate the flag because I think that that would look neat. Okay, so there's my skull, and I'm going to see what it looks like if I do the intersection right here. All right, so we're going to have to do path intersection with the blue part and with the red part. So to do that, I need two copies of the skull. I'm going to press Control D to duplicate, which I just did. And again, it puts the duplicate exactly on top of the other one. If I click and drag, you can see there's two. But I want them exactly on top of each other. So I'm going to press Control Z to put it back. And that's still selected. With that skull selected, I'm going to click on the stars and go to path intersection. All right. It did it. We can't see it because our other copy is still in the way, but I can drag it and show you that it did that. So Control Z. Now with this skull selected, I'm going to click on the red stripes and again do path intersection. And there you go. You can see that it's cut our parts out. So now all we have to do is take this guy, and I'm going to press Control 3 and then minus to zoom in and zoom back out a little. And I'm going to use the arrow keys to line it up. If I hold down Alt, I can move in smaller increments with the arrow keys to get it lined up fairly well. Okay? All right. And again, the same as with the other skull, these white areas aren't filled in. If you were going to do print and cut, this would be fine. But if we're going to do vinyl, here I'll show you, I'll draw a black background, press End to send it to the back, and you can see that the white stripes aren't filled in. So we just need to do that. So the plus key to zoom in. I'm going to choose the paint bucket, and I'm going to pick a light gray color so I can see it. And I'm just going to go in. Let's see, let me undo that and set my paint bucket. I'm going to set it to threshold 50, and grow or shrink will either make your paint fill larger or smaller than the area that you're filling. And I want it to be just, I'm going to actually put it at 0.5 pixels. Okay, and then I'm just going to go click and fill in all the parts that I want to be white. Okay. Whoops, Control Z. Probably should zoom in a little bit more. There we go. All right. Oh, missed a star. There he is. Now, click back on the selector tool to get out of the paint bucket, and now I'm going to right click on a gray item and go down to select same, fill color. So that selected everything that's light gray, everything that I just filled in. So I'm going to do path union, and that gets all those stuck together. So there those are. Control Z. Now I'm going to zoom out. So now you can see if I put our skull over on the black, he's all filled in and ready to go. Now, one thing I didn't talk about in the other videos is that if you were to want to do this as a layered vinyl, you might want to take this black and make it a solid black background. And that's easy enough to do at this point. We've got it. We're just going to break it apart and then union it together. So, path, break apart. Now, if you were to go back to path, combine, it puts it back together. But we don't want to do that. We want it all one solid piece. So, break apart and then path, union. That's the difference between combine and union. And now we can just slide this back over. Okay, and I got to send it to the back because it's on top of some of the layers. So I press end and send it to the back. Now for cutting, it doesn't really matter if these are light gray, but if we want it to look pretty, we can just change them to white. And that is it. I'll delete my black background over here that I used. And I could just save that as an SVG and load it up in Design Space, and it should work fine for a decal. I hope that showed you what you needed to know.